Hi, welcome to Cut Both Ways. I'm Kiki. Ray isn't here right now. He has a new audiobook project, and that is what he is very busy with. We talked about Wheel of Time this week, which was unexpected, but we really liked it in the end, so that's great. Spoilers today for Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Boys, The Eternals, The Name of the Wind, and The Wizard's First Rule. Alright, happy listening!
Well, here we go. We're talking about the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, here we are. Not where I expected to be this week.
Yeah, managing to actually view and talk about something.
Well, until The Kingsman comes on streaming, I don't think we'll be able to watch it.
It might be too late by then. I might not even be interested in talking about it by then.
Yeah, it'll be another week, I guess, week or so. It's also not looking so great for Morbius. I don't think we'll be able to watch it.
Yeah, I feel like that movie's going to be bad anyway. I haven't seen the two Venom movies, but I don't know, just from the promotional materials that I have seen from those, they just don't look interesting to me.
Yeah, well, lockdown restrictions are meant to be lifting at the end of the month.
I heard that by Monday, theaters at least are opening.
I'm skeptical.
I'm skeptical too. Either way, I'm actually more pleased that we watched The Wheel of Time than Morbius or Kingsman.
You know, it's true. I wasn't planning on watching The Wheel of Time. Just personally, I wasn't planning on doing it.
Yeah.
I never read the books, mostly because they're just monsters.
They are monsters. There's 14 of them. There are 14 Wheel of Time books. And
they're not little books. They're thick.
They're thick AF with 4 C's.
And I remember trying to read them as a young teenager and not really enjoying it.
I remember trying to read them as a kid, and then I tried again when I was an adult because I found like 7 of them at a thrift store. And I was like, well, I guess this is a good a time as any to start.
It's a sign from
reading.
the universe.
Yeah, it's a sign from the universe to read the Wheel of Time books. And I started reading the first one, and I got maybe like 2 or 3 chapters in. And it was like interesting, but it wasn't the most compelling. I think because I'm such a like basic bitch and I just love like fights and action and like, like heavy sort of like not violence, but like, I like when it's like bombastic action.
Yeah, you like a lot of action.
I like a lot of action, and the books don't really start out that way. I didn't even get to the part in the book where the town gets attacked. I didn't even get that far. So
having seen the first season of this now, I feel like I want to go pick up the books. I feel like I would enjoy them.
I think I enjoy the philosophy of it, the sort of like cyclical nature that they sort of say that the world is. It's a very like Buddhist sort of like...
well, they basically use a yin-yang symbol, so I'm not entirely surprised that you feel that way.
Yeah, and they have a sort of interesting... I don't want to call it like lore, because I think that's not the right way to put it, but they have a sort of like interesting nature to how...
The world building is interesting.
The philosophy, I think, of the world building is really interesting. But they never quite get into it, at least not in this first book. I mean, I'm assuming in 14 books, at least some point, they get into like what that means, the Wheel of Time.
Yeah, and like along with that philosophy, I really enjoyed the like idioms that were woven into it, and I can only assume that those were from the book. But there were a couple that I really like. The wheel weaves what the wheel turns or something like that. I don't quite remember.
I don't quite remember.
I just really
either.
appreciated all the idioms that were in there.
Yeah, really, it tells of like a kind of realistic world where like, in the real world we have all these idioms for like, oh, for God's sake and stuff like that that are like stemmed from the like religious nature of a lot of society.
Yeah.
And so it does make sense that in this world, if the religion is that the wheel turns, like whether or not you take part in it, and the wheel will like churn out souls again and people again and circumstances again. I think they could do something interesting with that. I just worry that because there are 14 books, and I think they focus mostly on these characters. Like,
do they?
I'm assuming it's predominantly the story of these 4 characters. Like maybe some die and new characters come in and sort of take a more predominant role. But I do think it's about this singular turning of the wheel. Well, and so I'm worried that like, how are you going to do 14 seasons? Like even what is it? Supernatural barely got 14 seasons.
No, I think you would be surprised and alarmed at how many seasons Supernatural got.
I got to like 20, but it did after like, what, 5 seasons kind of get
20.
canceled? Where'd they get, 15?
15, 16?
15 or 16,
like
yeah.
yeah.
And Supernatural was like a monster. Like, it was unstoppable.
Yeah,
I don't view this as being unstoppable like Supernatural.
And Supernatural had some really bad seasons, like really bad.
Yeah. I can't imagine these actors and actresses and whatever wanting to do this for the next like 30 years of their lives, you know?
Yeah, well, they've already had to recast Matt.
Yeah?
The guy who plays Matt. For unknown reasons, we're not really sure why.
He wasn't a very predominant part of season 1, but it did seem like they're setting him up to be something in season 2.
Yeah, well, he went back to the city,
yeah, he
right?
went back to
like
the Shadowlands.
The Shadow. Right, so he's
I
going
don't remember what that
to...
city was called. It wasn't actually called the Shadowlands.
Right. I don't remember. The names were made up, and like
All names
they
are made
sounded great. No, I realize that all words are made up.
Yeah.
No, I mean like the names were
there was a lot of
in an internally consistent language. I feel that I just don't know.
Yeah, it was. I had a lot of trouble remembering people's names and places names. That's weird.
Yeah. Honestly, throughout
right
most of
enough.
it, I think I referred to everyone just by their D&D class. I was just like,
the rogue, the fighter, the wizard, and the cleric. Yeah. I for sure felt that as well. I definitely like felt strong D&D vibes from a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
And it has a really strong sort of like D&D root in it that like a lot of old D&D stories have that like the ancient wizard shows up and goes, "You are destined for greatness," and then they sort of thrust the young adventurers on the journey, and they like, take part in the journey a little bit, but they, they're hands off because they can't interfere too much. And it's like, it's an old trope that has died quite heavily in recent years, and I don't hate it.
Do you think it's died?
It's definitely not as predominant.
It is. Come on.
Name something that is like new that has that trope.
Shadow and Bone basically does the exact same thing.
Not really.
Yeah. But I guess the like mentor figure in that is not hands off.
He's not hands off, and he's not really this like ancient like you're destined for greatness.
Right.
You the way. It's more like it's the classic like young adult story where it's like there's one chosen one. We can't wait for them to arrive. Oh, there they are.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I really liked about Wheel of Time was that you didn't know who the chosen one was.
Yeah, I like that too.
Pretty much right up till the end. And honestly, I was very disappointed by their decision.
Yeah, I didn't like. I think Rand.
He's conveniently named like Ayn Rand, so I'm just like, oh, that's the one I hate.
Yeah. He was the least interesting character to me, and also the most like annoying character to me.
He was
very annoying. I hated a lot of his like personality. And the weird thing was, it really felt like, and both of us were saying this already, so I'll just like reiterate for the podcast. Both of us were like, what are these people's personalities? Like Matt and Rand were the two that sort of get stuck together. And they kept flip-flopping between which was the sort of chipper one and which was the brooding sort of like, I don't give a fuck one.
Yeah, it was really like, I had whiplash. I was just like, the guy, Matt, who had this conversation with Perrin where he like takes him through this knife and talks about his dead wife, then like immediately turns out and is an asshole. Like, it just didn't make sense for me.
It really felt like these two characters had the same personality, but they kept changing their mind about which one had which sort of facet of that personality, the like classic like protagonist personality. It
was like a revolving door. If one was the asshole, the other one was nice, and then
they would just switch.
Like flip-flopped the
it
whole
was
time.
So weird, and I really disliked it. And it's like, I wouldn't say that this was totally a fault of the writing, because it really did feel like all the other characters had distinct, unique personalities. Mm-hmm. Like the wizard, I'm doing it again. I can't remember their names. I'm pulling up IMDb. Moraine? No. She's the like wizard,
she's
like
the
ancient.
Aishthai. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean in the party, the wizard.
Oh, Igraine.
Let's.
But then, what was the slightly older?
Yeah, the one that like was maybe more powerful that ended up being. I call her the cleric because she mostly healed people.
Yeah, she's the wisdom or whatever. Yeah. Whatever her name was.
Yeah, Egwene. Nynaeve.
Nynaeve, right.
So yeah, Egwene had I liked Egwene's character. I thought she was really believable, that she was kind of like, she wasn't quite damsel in distress, but she was like, kept getting put in these scenarios where she had to like fight really hard for her life, kind of. And it was interesting to see that sort of not be the trope that she's like, help me, and then the boys come and save her.
None of the women in this were damsels in distress.
Yeah, and I really like that. I did like a lot of these fantasy stories like really fall into that. And I was telling you about Dragonlance, how Dragonlance was the book series that I did read, at least the main trilogy, the Autumn, Twilight, Winters something, and Spring's Dawning. I can't remember exactly what they're called. There's like 17 of those books too, but there is a core trilogy that kind of wraps up the main story that they're trying to tell, and I really think The Wheel of Time should have done that, because 14 books, he didn't make it to the end, the writer. And they had to bring in Bryan Sanderson to write the last few books. Brandon, sorry. I don't actually know. I've never read his books either.
I haven't gotten around to it. Quite frankly, it makes sense that they brought him in to write Wheel of Time, because his books are also just massive tomes.
Yeah, massive fantasy books. Yeah, I'm not surprised, but what was the point I was making? Yeah, in those books, in the Dragonlance books, they're in the first book, and I said this to you yesterday, the first book is probably the worst one. It's a little bit tropey. It's a little bit like you can't say that this is like, oh, I've never read a book like this before. But once I got to the second book, I was like, wow, they've really done some unique things with this. And they don't allow that damsel in distress trope to become too predominant, and they'd flip it on its head in an interesting way in the Dragonlance books. And I really like that about those books. And then I was expecting this series, The Wheel of Time, to be sort of like that first Dragonlance book, where it's like, oh, she's just sort of like following the boys along, being like, I wish I could be strong like them. But no, she's very independent. She's very like, she wants to be with them because they're friends and lovers, and because she has this sense of responsibility.
I'm a little disappointed that despite all the times that you're like, oh, The Wheel of Time kind of is subverting these classic fantasy tropes, in the end, it just is generic.
Yeah. Well, it is an old book, you know?
Yeah, I get that. I'm very disappointed with Rand being the dragon.
I'm disappointed too. I think they had to stick with the source material, so they had to do that.
No, of course.
And so people who have read the books and listening to us probably might be a little bit like, you don't know, you don't understand. But one thing I read that I think you're going to be interested to hear is originally when Moraine, when Moraine shows up to the town, she says, one of you three boys is the dragon. And the girls just come along.
Oh, interesting.
And then for the show, they said, no, one of you four is the dragon. Oh, maybe five, because she also has this like unknowable like power. And so they did sort of take out that gendered thing that was in the book. And I know we were talking about that, being like, I wonder if they've changed the gender of any of these characters.
Yeah.
I don't know if they did that, but I was reading that originally. When Moraine shows up, she says it's one of you three boys.
Yeah. I like the way that
you don't know who it is. Yeah.
No, you don't know who it is.
I really like that.
I really like that. I also really liked just the sheer diversity of the cast was quite frankly, it was stunning. I've never seen a cast that was so diverse, and I'm very excited about that.
I was really happy with that too. I agreed with you in the sense that a lot of the costumes were very like forced, diverse, sort of like weird, like what sort of culture are you trying to appropriate here with these costumes? I
said fetish orient. That's what I said.
Because it's like these fantasy books have this sort of need, and I mostly pointed it out with the landscapes and with the environment, that they have this need to make it fantasy. Oh, we got to spice it up and make it look unbelievable. But there's no need for that.
But you know what? My point is, and I make this point a lot because it also applies a lot at LARP, where if your idea of fantasy costume is somebody else's ordinary clothes, then you're not. Then you're doing it wrong. I enjoyed I thought the costumes were great, very believable.
Yeah, they were well made.
Very well made. The construction of them was amazing. The identity of them was amazing, where they you could separate each group by their costumes, and it was very consistent. But their town in Two Rivers, like a lot of people were just walking around wearing gi with like a belt instead of,
like a sash or something.
Yeah, and it was a little bit like, if your fantasy costume is like somebody else's everyday clothes, don't do it. Just don't.
Yeah, and so I saw it mostly in the environments because it's like not that this is a cultural appropriation thing, but like the environments were really like interesting and very normal, but then sometimes they just have the need to throw something in the background that just like looks fantasy, and I just didn't like that. I hate that need to make things supernatural. Because the world is beautiful as it is.
Yeah, and I hate that need to make things supernatural by importing geological landforms from Asia, basically.
Yeah, from Asia or from like South Africa and stuff like that.
Yeah,
where it's like,
exactly.
Ooh, a desert in the middle of it. It's like deserts aren't this like crazy fantasy thing. It's the weird thing about it is it's right next to this other environment that it doesn't make sense that it could be next to, and that's what makes it fantasy.
It's a little bit like Zootopia, where you just have like those, where you have like I don't know, Arctic land right next to the desert, and you're just like, wow, that's actually kind of bewildering. But obviously it works for Zootopia because that's kind of the point.
And that's a kid's thing, and like the world is already so unbelievable. For a fantasy thing, I like it to be a little bit believable. My fantasy that I like is the Lord of the Rings, where it's like, there is like magic and fantasy elements in there, but it doesn't feel like anything that isn't at least possible within the realm of reality.
Well, I mean, of course, Tolkien was very consistent with his landforms, but they were very much based on like what he had experienced and what he knew. Yeah. So like a lot of it was like based on, and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I'm saying it's a good thing. Like I think that it fit together very consistently because of that. You know, I don't know. Maybe the Wheel of Time, like maybe the books are very consistently themed in the world, but the show, like some of the scenery felt a little bit like, oh, it's fantasy land.
Yeah, and like so the diversity in this was really good, but I do think they suffered with their sort of like costuming in terms of like the cultural style that they tried to pull off there.
Yeah.
Because I do really feel like...
Of course there's always room for growth, right? Like I think I mentioned right at the beginning where Rand is talking to Igraine about being a wisdom, and he's like, no husband, no kids. And I was like, you know what? Like that, like why did we have to go with the like heteronormative nuclear family implications here? Why couldn't he have just said like no family?
Yeah, and you said that before, and I totally agree with that like it really made me hate his character immediately, that his entire motivation is he wants to have a kid.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that's a fine motivation, I guess, but, like...
I mean, like, I guess, but it just feels, like, so archaic. It feels so... And I guess this is a, like, historical world, but it just feels so... like, if you have access to this, like, magical power where you can, like, change reality... The one thing that's nearly tempting you to the dark side is that you could create a kid,
like with like have a family basically with
that just seems
with your
like
partner. It's just like you guys could like talk about it, like do some family
talk
planning.
About your feelings, and like he does in the end come around to being like, I'll support you being an Aes Sedai, you know, I'll be your what do they call it, warder. But it's like, I don't know how to rant about that without sort of just being like nonsensical and like it's obviously like I personally don't ever want kids, so there's a little bit of me being like, why would he want that? It's like I can't understand his point of view.
It's just very at odds with, I think it's a generational thing. Like I honestly, like friends in our age group, like they don't have kids by and large. Like
I have
some
like
of them
one
are thinking
friend
about
that
them.
wants kids. That's about it.
Some of them are thinking about having kids, but like honestly, we know like one couple who actually has kids.
Do we? Oh yeah.
We know like one couple.
I was like thinking of like, who do we know?
Who do we know? And they're like significantly older than us.
Yeah.
So.
But so I did like the sort of different motivations of each character. I think some of them were really good. I have all the names here, so I'm a little bit cheating. Perrin, I think Perrin was my favorite.
Yeah, standout, great. Great actor too.
I'm a sucker for a good like tragic story, and that when he swung around and killed that girl, I was like, I did not see that coming at all.
I didn't either. I was so shocked.
So shocked that they put that in there, and
I think I can see that was the moment where you like bought in. You were like,
yeah,
okay,
for sure.
We're watching the rest of this now.
I was a little iffy. I was like, maybe we should, because it's like 8 episodes, an hour each. We already were struggling to find something to do because everything's fucking closed, so we couldn't get any of the movies we wanted to watch.
Yeah. And
we were even debating doing shows from the past, which I think maybe we'll do eventually, like talk about shows. Oh, our cat just sort of snuck in here.
Hi.
If there's bonks or scratches, we're sorry, but deal with it. And like eventually we're going to do that, but I did want to talk about this, and for that first, I guess maybe like 45 minutes, I don't remember if it happened in the first episode, I wasn't invested. I wasn't bought in. I was like, I like some of these characters. It's very like tropey fantasy.
You can kind of see like what happened, where like in episode 1 I was like actively taking notes, which means that I wasn't really watching.
Yeah.
Which is like a thing that I just do sometimes. But then you can see like after episode 1 there are no more notes.
Yeah, and one thing I did like, and I think a lot of modern fantasy struggles with this, is they bought into the idea that anything should be possible. So they didn't have it be like, I think a lot of shows, they purposefully restrict themselves, and it can be really interesting when you do that, because then it's like, how do you achieve certain things with all these restrictions? A good example is like Avatar. Avatar is very like each avatar or each nation can only bend one element. So an interesting plot element is to have these characters bend something that is maybe ambiguously elemental, like with the blood bending and metal bending and stuff. But with this, the magic of it felt like it could do anything. You know, they could have portals, they could heal wounds, they could shoot fire, lightning, whatever. And I find that not a lot of magic systems in fantasy nowadays do that. They don't allow it to be this like Dungeons and Dragons style, like, oh, I'm just going to cast a spell to like make you fly.
Yeah, I think the only restriction really that I can think of was that they couldn't like make physical things with it. Which like, so it's not entirely without limit. Like,
it's not entirely without limit,
I think
but
that if you did something that's entirely without limit, you kind of end up with a lot of plot holes. Like, I'm thinking Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Basically, where you just, like, there are a number of, like, excellent fan works that sort of go through and define the magic system, which is in a really interesting way.
Yeah.
But you kind of, like, just end up then with magic not being something that you can talk about in the story, because, like, every time you talk about it, you just are like, this is just confusing and has no rules.
Yeah, and when you have this ability that can tangibly do anything, then the way to solve anything is with that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, there's a boulder falling down a hill. Magic it away.
Yeah, I guess, you know, that's the difference between what they call, like, soft magic and hard magic, where, like, soft magic, you don't know what the rules are, and that's really like Lord of the Rings, where you, like, have no idea what Gandalf can do.
Yeah, it's...
And I guess...
it's hard to, like, put it in a world, because, like, in playing Dungeons and Dragons, you do come into that problem where if someone's playing a spellcaster, eventually they can just cast delete problem.
Yeah.
But I do want to see that in a show or a movie, because not a lot of them do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for good reason, because like if you can just go delete problem, you're like you're gonna run into the end of your story very quickly.
Yeah, but I still think there's something there. I still think that you can tell an interesting story, because like in the way that it works in D&D, it takes a while to build up that level of competence.
Yeah.
And if they do it the same in Wheel of Time, where it's like if you try to tap into that higher magic, you burn yourself from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you'd find that this is maybe a difference in the modes of storytelling, because I can think of like a lot of anime that end with like delete problem.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking like maybe this is just a different mode of storytelling.
I agree. It is that traditional fantasy setting, I think, that I'm sort of looking for here. One second. But one thing that ends up happening with anime is once the protagonist reaches that level of delete problem, they're facing against other people who have that level of power, that is, they can just delete problems. So it's like it does eventually become this sort of like who has a bigger stick.
You do kind of get there though, right? Because Rand essentially deletes Problem.
I don't really know what he did at the end there.
Yeah,
I think it's maybe purposefully ambiguous, but I don't quite get. I didn't feel it like emotional. Like, yeah, he did it.
Yeah.
It just sort of like he like dropped the like what is it, the idol on the ground, and then it cracked the ground, and then she says, "Oh, this is like whatever glass. It's not supposed to be able to be chipped. What does it mean?
Yeah.
I don't know."
Yeah. I guess the rest of the 13 books answer that.
Oh boy, yay! Some of them are prequels, so maybe it's not exactly 13 books. Some of them probably go into that like future history, which I like that. I did like the Wheel of Time idea that like the past is technically the future because time is cyclical. You know, they reached that level of high technology, but then it ended and we went back into sort of the Dark Ages.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it. I think we can look forward to like maybe at least 5 or 6 seasons of this.
I don't think so. I think it's going to get 3 seasons tops.
You think it's going to get 3?
Yeah.
Well, they've already filmed the second one. Like I think they they're either filming or they have completely filmed. They started filming in July.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure how long it will take them, but I feel like they're probably done.
One thing I always find with stuff like this, and this is exactly what happened with The Witcher, where season 1 had much more focus on like making sure they like comb through the details and like really get it right. And then with season 2, they're sort of just trying to tell the story so that they can get it done.
Well, I think that they've been given like adequate time, right? Unlike The Witcher, which they were like, oh, we need to do a second season.
Is that how it happened? I really feel like it was the same. Like they're very similar.
So?
Yeah.
Because the second season of The Wheel of Time got greenlit before the first season even aired. Like they started filming it before even airing the first season.
Yeah.
So I think they just have more time in general. Which is definitely a good thing. Like the production values of these fantasy shows are getting increasingly higher, and The Wheel of Time also like huge production values.
They
like,
did a good job.
So
though.
good.
I was really nervous, and there were some like maybe like moments where the like goat men looked a little weird.
Yeah, the animation was by and large great, except for maybe the goat men.
But I felt like it only really happened when they were kind of in the background in groups is sort of when they became like a little bit like, that's kind of not the best. The way they move is a little bit like cartoony. Yeah. But anytime they focused on one in their face, they did look really good. Yeah,
they did look really good. And the like battle, the scale of the battle, like that final battle that they had at the Borderlands was like great. It was very good. When they had that scene of like shooting like the whole army. Yeah. I definitely felt it. I felt those like chills. Yeah. The only thing I would say is like I have a headache today because we watched.
Binged it. Yeah,
we did, and usually like that doesn't give me a headache, but I think the oversaturation.
Oh yeah, that is something we talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of gave me a headache.
Yeah, there was something about the saturation or like the color palette here that was just a little bit like weird.
They definitely kicked up the saturation, basically.
It was really predominant with Rand. It made him look kind of like drawn in certain ways, like his like...
Well, yeah, because saturation is just basically going to like pop the colors while like...
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I think it was really obvious with him. I think there's a way they could have got that through special effects. But it did feel very like...
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it was, but I feel it today. Like, it looked pretty in the moment. Like, I'm not saying that it looked bad. In fact, like, saturation is pretty. That's why people do it in the first place. But, like, yeah, I definitely have a headache from it today.
So a plot hole came up in my mind, and I don't know if maybe I just missed the explanation for this, but when they go to that first town, Rand and Matt, and they see that thief in the cage, and they go like, oh, that's what happens to thieves, I guess. And then later it turns out the reason they killed him is because of who he is.
Yeah,
he's I can't remember exactly what they're called.
Yeah, but he's like a group of people.
He's like some warrior from some far off land. And then the guy says, oh, well, these guys aren't actually like bad people. The only time you have to be scared of them is when they have their face covered. That's when they're there to kill you. And then they also say the way you recognize one of these people is from their orange hair.
Yeah.
So they killed this guy immediately upon seeing him, based on who he is.
Oh yeah, and
but they didn't
kill
they
Rand.
didn't give Rand a second look.
That's really funny.
They're just kind of like, hey buddy,
That's
like,
a really
welcome.
good point.
And it's like they don't know that the clothing this is a sort of broad gesture here, but they don't know that the way one of these people is dressed is sort of the tell of whether they're there to kill you or not. So they don't know that Rand not wearing his exact garb means he's not there to kill them.
Yeah, and it's not like Rand doesn't look like those people, because like later on the Builder immediately recognizes him as a part of that people.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's a good point. I don't know why they don't just kill him. I mean, to be fair, someone does try to kill him in that town, but for entirely different reasons.
Entirely different reasons. I like that too. That sort of like like both of us were like, oh, is this going to be some weird like love triangle? She's going to like replace the other character. She's maybe going to join the party. No, she's full out, I'm going to kill you. Yeah.
It's a little mysterious to me exactly how she knew who they were.
She said she had dreams.
She had dreams, yeah. I get that.
The Dark One gave her visions of them.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, anyone who worships the Dark One gets these visions, apparently,
I
is
guess,
what they said.
yeah.
That he like shows them like who he's looking for. Dark One not a big standout to me. I wasn't too invested in this guy.
Yeah. And I think that the Dream Dark One with like the ember eyes and whatever was also like a particularly weak point in the animation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought he was going to be something else. I thought that was going to be the power of the dragon sort of manifesting for them, but no, it was just the Dark One vision giving them nightmares.
Yeah, I think like the first time we see him, it looks very Slenderman. Like the character design, I feel like.
Yeah, I think it was when Rand peeks at the bat.
Yeah. And like Dream Dark One, very Slenderman.
Yeah.
Also like his generals, I forget what they're called.
The Eyeless, very Voldemort.
Yeah, very Voldemort.
They were cool though. I thought they were done really well, and they were.
I liked the like when they opened their mouths and had.
I can't remember what that creature's called. The like lamprey, I think. That have the like teeth mouth.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I was like, oh, Voldemort could have taken like notes from this.
Yeah,
like that was scary.
You think no nose is scary?
Yeah,
no nose and no eyes is even scarier.
Yeah,
and then chewy mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I liked them.
So
I thought they were cool.
It was actually an improvement on the design of Voldemort, but still.
Yeah, I didn't think the Dark One was a big standout, sort of like interesting. I do enjoy the sort of villain that's very like refined, but I think they could have done something with him to make him interesting. He just sort of seemed
very
like
unassuming.
And
I like that actually. I thought it was cool.
I think it could be cool, but it wasn't that cool to me. And I didn't like how he transitioned either.
Yeah.
How he like shoved the arrow in his face, kind of like folded in on himself. I thought that was just kind of cheesy.
Yeah, and there's like this you know, you'll know what I'm talking about. That there's like when you do that on really unassuming sort of villain, you like give them this like edge of like ruthlessness where you like still believe that he would be capable of like atrocities.
I think they managed to pull that off though with the Candyman.
I think so.
I can't remember what his name
I
was.
don't remember
I
either.
call him the Candyman.
The like merchant.
The merchant, who just kept sort of popping up, and then in the end, I called it right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And you did kind of too. You're like, why is he laughing?
Honestly, I know that obviously they can't like change the book too much.
Yeah.
Change the material from the book too much. But honestly, like if he were the Dark One, I would have like lost my mind.
Paddin
That
Fane?
is just so interesting. Yeah.
Paddin Fane. Yeah. He's like the like guy who just comes to town and like is kind of quirky and funny. And I kept spotting him in the background, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he might be the Dark One, or he might be like some agent of the Dark One.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought agent of the Dark One, but honestly, if he'd ended up being the Dark One, I would have been like, oh my god, so good. Probably because that's the way it is in the book.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
But I think there could have been an interesting way to do the Dark One without him be this like just sort of guy. And like his motivation's kind of unclear. Maybe that's on purpose too. But I just didn't feel it. I didn't feel it with him. I felt it more with Paddin Fane than I did with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the actor who like insult to the actor that played him. I thought that actor did a good job of being sort of like a refined gentleman. So it's probably just the like scene notes that he got to be like, act like this. I don't know. I didn't feel like he was adequately like, I'm tempting you to the dark side with my like suave sort of nature. I didn't really feel that. He just seems like a guy.
Yeah. Yeah, in the end, I ended up liking this a lot more than I thought I would.
I agree with that. I think I thought I was going to like it when I was like, oh, they're doing a Wheel of Time, like finally a full out like fantasy adventure. And then after that first like 10 minutes, I was like, oh, I'm not going to like this. This is going to be real. Like, this is going to be a slog. Maybe we should just watch something else, because it's like, it's either we commit to like 9 hours of this, or we just watch a like hour and a half, 2 hour movie and then just talk about that and like fill in the gap. I'm glad we like stuck through it. I definitely think we binged it a little too hard.
Yeah, I think so too. I would like to spread it out a bit more.
I mean, that's just the nature of us like struggling this week to find something.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to know what to do because we can't watch any of the new release movies because we can't go to the theaters. But at the same time, like, doing a show every week it's a lot because we don't watch a show every week.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to eventually run out of stuff and have to sort of go back and like talk about stuff that we liked as like younger people's movies that maybe impacted us a bit more.
Yeah.
Do we have an Instagram yet?
No, not yet.
Set up an Instagram. Someone's going to steal our name and try to like...
Yeah, you set up an Instagram.
I don't know how to do that.
I don't know how to do it either.
Listen, I set all this up. You set up the Instagram.
I set up the YouTube.
Yeah, so there you go.
And the rest of the podcast.
So, yeah, because I feel like, I mean, I don't know, like, if we'll ever hear from anyone, but it'd be nice if someone was like, you should watch this movie, because that'll sort of give us a free,
that would be cool,
ticket to be like, okay, we don't have to, like, struggle to find a new release this week. We can just sort of watch something
that'd be cool. It's kind of like recommendations from people, too.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't always know what I want to watch.
I don't know either. I didn't want to watch Morbius. I'm a little bit happy we didn't watch Morbius. I don't think I want to watch it. And so just to clarify, I fucking love vampires. I'm a huge vampire fan. Morbius looks stupid.
Yeah. What is it about like the like more dark leaning comics that like movies just can't capture?
It takes a certain type of person, I think, to pull it off. Because I did like the Watchmen movie. I think it was pretty good. Yeah,
but like The Crow was terrible too.
The Crow? I never watched The Crow.
No.
Everyone tells me like you should watch it because like they're like, you pull off his vibe, you know. You've got his like long dark hair and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that my uncle was really excited about. So like,
yeah, a lot of people love that. That is a cult classic. Like people think that that's like a really good movie. I never watched it though.
I don't know. Maybe it just didn't age very well.
Oh, probably.
I feel like,
I think a lot of things don't age very
well.
Except The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, what else can we talk about with this? What do you think of the actors? Like, was there any... We're only like halfway.
Stand out. I really liked Matt in the beginning. Because, like,
really?
I thought he was so sympathetic with his parents and his sisters. And, like, I liked how he like talked to Perrin about his wife, and like it just like in the beginning I just generally was like in the beginning I just generally liked his character, you know, like he seemed like such a genuinely nice person in just a really rough situation. And like I was sad like, because as soon as the like main story arc actually started, he like did this 180 basically out of nowhere. Like I get that he went to that city, Shadow City, and found that dagger, and like there was the whole like being possessed by shadow or whatever. But it started before that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it started way before that.
Yeah.
I think there was a certain point where I started to like his character, and then he flipped again, and I started not liking his character again. I don't think it was in that first, like, before they left the first town.
Yeah.
I definitely think he was probably my least favorite character, and, like, I do like the character that turns villain, you know? I think it can be cool.
Yeah, I didn't like him in the end, and I feel like part of that was because it was just, like, so unbelievable to me that he would behave like that based on like what I liked about him in the beginning. that I just, I don't know. I just have whiplash from, like, how my opinion of him changed. And, like, I think my favorite ended up being Perrin.
Yeah, my
He's
favorite
just, like,
very
a very
quickly was
chill
Perrin.
guy.
Yeah.
He's just a very chill guy. I like the, like, wolf aspect. That's cool. I hope they explore that more.
I think they like gave each of them sort of an interesting like character core, like Matt being like the sort of like dark roguish one, Perrin being the barbarianish sort of like fighter one with a bit of like a connection to wolves and stuff.
Yeah, maybe he's multi-classing in Druid.
Yeah. No, barbarian has a little bit of like connection to nature.
Like primal
like connections and stuff.
Right.
Rand was your very like fighter huntsman. Nynaeve was like the cleric, and Egwene was sort of the wizard.
Yeah.
I didn't like that they brought Nynaeve back to life at the end there. I feel like that's something
that was very cheesy. I did not enjoy it.
Fantasy tends to do that, where like someone will die and then magic will bring them back, and it's supposed to be this like relieving thing. Like, yay.
I hate that in general. I know that a lot of people like really struggle to kill off characters, but like just one. Yeah,
and they did kind of kill off a lot of main characters-ish a few times, but
like nearly almost,
but they never fully kill off the main. What is it, 7? I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you have like the 5 kids, and then
kids. One of them's kind of adult, and then the mage and the warder. Moraine and Lan. I do think Lan was also like really interesting to me. Lan and Perrin, I think, and like Moraine was just fucking rad. I love a good wizard, and she definitely pulled it off. I know the actress that plays Scarlet Witch, I was telling you about this, says that when she was doing her like hand symbols and like magic gestures, she felt kind of ridiculous, and then they like promised her they'll make it look good in post. And it does look good. I think the way Moraine was doing stuff was really cool. I think I would have so much fun doing that, because I have fun doing that at LARP, so why wouldn't I? But,
I always think it's
Moraine,
funny how
really sold it and did a good job.
On film, when you like have these like schools of magic and they like all pick a different color. I'm just like, I don't know why the color coding was necessary.
You gotta know who's the healers, who's the druids.
But also, I always think it's really funny when they like adapt it to film, because they always pick characters whose like skin undertones go well with those colors, and I'm always just like, you picked based on your skin undertone. Like, you say you like have this affinity towards healing magic, but no, you just like yellow.
You look good in blue.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's what happened here.
Yeah.
I would do the same. I'd be like, I'm gonna choose the house that wears all black clothing.
Like obviously they did, with the casting, picked someone who would look really great in blue. Like, I always get a laugh out of that. I don't know what it is about like fantasy trope color coding, but I just think it's really funny.
I think Moraine was really cool. I liked her sort of like character connection to the wizards, and how she was like secretly sleeping with the like arch wizard.
Yeah, that was really cool. I liked that. That was a really good twist. I did not see that coming at all.
Yeah. I was wondering why they focused on that weird like wall ornament for her.
Right?
I was like, is this going to be like her like from her like backstory or something like that? But no, it was for her like current story. That was really cool.
Yeah, that was really great. I liked the whole like, you have to exile me moment, like that was good drama.
Yeah, and it's like, it makes sense too. Like it's a smart choice from a character perspective, that it's like my I don't know, Hogwarts house, whatever you want to call them, my like wing of wizards has sort of told me that I'm on lockdown right now, but I need to go out to do our like plan, so you're gonna have to exile me. Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. I think that was like the only woman with short hair, except for the like bartender who can see the pattern. She also had short hair. But like by and large, this like really played into some gender roles while not playing into others, and I was like, I'm confused whether I like this or not.
Yeah, I think it was pretty clear.
It was just very odd.
It's pretty clear they wanted to change some of the stuff, but then also some of it they felt like that maybe they had to stick to what the books are, because there's a lot of like pushback against for like quotation marks forced diversity and like anything that comes out, people just get mad, but they're like, you made that character like, you know, non-traditional for no reason. It's like that's such a weak argument.
It really is. I feel like, okay, so like these fantasy works are getting to the point where like they're like 50, 60, 80, 100 years old at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like we can adapt the work without adopting the attitudes in it. And if we can't, then I don't think we should do it. Like, hot take.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather not have something adapted if it has bad attitudes in it, than have it portrayed and have those attitudes still pervasive. And that's just how I feel. I would rather not have an additional work, no matter how well it's written, no matter how great it is, no matter how many people love it.
Yeah.
If it does those things badly. Oh, his full name is Matrim. That's a much better, like, the whole time I was just like, so you have Rand, Perrin, Igraine, and Matt. The like least fantasy name I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Might be as bad as Paul.
No, Paul is definitely worse.
Paul is definitely worse. It's just not a very fantasy name. But like Matt is also not a very fantasy name.
Like, it's fine, don't have a fantasy name, but like when you have all these characters with these like elaborate fantasy names, Phililène de Lillouine,
I know,
and then you have like Joe,
I know,
it's
right?
just really jarring.
It really is. I felt that way in Dune, where like it's Paul and his mother Jessica. You're just like, oh, everyone else has a fantasy name, but just these two.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really funny. Like, spot the main character.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they didn't. I was really curious because sometimes I was like kind of feeling that maybe they changed Moraine into a woman, but they didn't.
I don't see how they could have, because like all of the users of the one power have to be female.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even think of that. I forgot.
Yeah.
Fully.
Because like men go mad. I guess that was like the side effect of the last time the wheel turned.
Yeah, they said the dragon broke the wheel instead of fixing it.
Right, yeah, and so now men can't use the one power without going a bit nuts.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see like what that ex-dragon's motivation was to make that choice, because they could have explored that a little bit, and I guess maybe they do in the prequel books, but I don't want to wait that long, and I don't think they're going to get that far.
Yeah,
and you gave us like a quarter of an episode that was about that, where he's like, not a quarter of an episode, maybe like 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's true. I would have liked to know what his motivation was.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm not really sure.
I think a cool thing they could have done is had two scenes side by side, sort of how when the false dragon is using the one power, how the like shadow people kind of talk to him. When Rand is facing off against the Dark One, he could see the shadow of what happened last time, you know, and see like why that character made the choice to. I guess he doesn't break the wheel; he just sort of like corrupts the one power.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah,
it would have been cool, and like maybe that's a plot twist they're saving for like a future story arc. But I don't think we're going to get that far, or we're going to wait for so long that it's not going to be worth it. Plot twist is only good if you're like not like, okay, finally I'm learning what the hell this means.
Yeah.
Like that's the classic like M. Night Shyamalan, like you don't really get to know the plot twist till the end, and so it just kind of makes the rest of it confusing, and like you're like, this was just stupid.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll be a cool plot twist, but I just want to know. And I could look it up, but I'm not going to. I don't like spoiling stuff for myself.
No, I know. Yeah.
We still got lots of time. Really slogging along this time.
Yeah.
I think we weren't expecting to like this, and so we're both kind of like
yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how well received it was before we started watching it.
Yeah, neither did I.
The articles.
Anything on Amazon, I'm kind of surprised is well received. A lot of Amazon Prime tends to be like lower quality. They
started off pretty rough, but I feel like they've gotten better.
I think they started off basically non-existent, but they did have a bit of a spike when they came out with what was it, The Boys. And there was a few other shows that came out around that time that did really well. But then after that, there was this really long sort of like quiet period where just like nothing happened.
Well, I feel like I didn't watch a lot of Amazon's earlier productions because they did exactly the thing that I don't like about DC, where they did like everything was dark and gritty and had this like tone of misery over it.
Yeah.
And also like the way that they film those gritty, like, I don't know what it is about filming gritty, quote unquote gritty, but they add this like desaturation filter to everything that just makes it really like not fun to watch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know
like,
exactly
the
what you mean.
Batman movies are like so bad for this, where like everything is just desaturated. It's just like you might as well have filmed in grayscale. You might as well just not have wasted color film. Right. Not that that's the way that filming works anymore, but you know what I mean? Like,
I agree with you. There's a certain level of like the way you film something sets a bit of tone. So I understand why they feel the need to do that, but they don't do a good enough job with the level of grittiness to make it sort of match that scale of grit.
For me, it's like a vicious cycle. I don't like either one of those things. I don't like the gritty tone. I don't like the desaturated filming. They kind of seem to go hand in hand.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I just end up not watching a whole lot of those shows.
I do think The Boys and the other show that I really liked, both superhero stuff, was Invincible, did have like very dark, gritty sort of stories to them. But they didn't do that. They didn't desaturate it. They didn't make it all dark. Like The Boys is very like filmed in the day. Like everything happens like out in the daylight, just like in the city in Toronto. Actually, you can maybe catch me in a few episodes if you look real close. And it does make it more interesting, I think, because it's got this kind of like cartoonish feel to it, where it's very like a lot of the violence is like hyper violence to the level of ridiculousness, like a character holding a baby that has laser vision and using it to like kill people.
Yeah, I guess what I don't like, and people are gonna like roast me for this, is that I don't like it when you do gritty in a lazy way. Yeah. And I think that Batman does it in a very lazy way.
Would you call The Wheel of Time gritty?
No, I wouldn't. I don't think that I would.
I think part of it I would. There were a lot of elements in this. I think that we're trying to be on the edgier side. Like, I think they were sort of leaning into the darker story tones than your traditional sort of fantasy story.
I agree, yeah. They spent a considerable amount of time with like the fake dragon. Yeah. And
his like going a bit mad.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess I kind of see where you're coming from, but I just I don't think that it was done in the way that I don't like, where like, and I know that I keep bringing up Batman, but I think like it's honestly like where you do like the long silences and the like just you're trying to build a specific sort of atmosphere, but you're doing it in a really lazy way, where you're like hoping that your manipulation is going to make your film better, but that's just not how it works. I'm like, I hate that when you like...
It works for a lot of people, though. It does work to, like, if you just make something look darker, people view it as, like, emotionally darker.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's just very lazy storytelling. Like, you should use the visual elements of a film to enhance the message and the plot. It shouldn't be filling in gaps. That's just not an effective way of story. Like, it's not improving your film to do that.
Yeah. I worry that, like, that's going to be the trend for a lot of fantasy films, is they're going to try to go, like, darker and grittier.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
Like, Lord of the Rings was a very, like, gritty and dark film, but the only times they used that was to, like you're saying, enhance sort of the feeling. Like, the only time it's, like, dark and rainy and everything's miserable is at the battles where, like... Yeah. The warriors are attacking during the night,
or it
and
like
so it's used to enhance
reflects the like, characters' attitudes in that scene, or stuff like that. So like that's what I think is good about filmmaking and using those moments of like darkness and silence is because those enhance the storytelling. What I hate is when you try and make those tell the story for you.
Yeah, I didn't think that they did that with The Wheel of Time. I think they did a good job.
I thought they did a good job.
They did a good job with the darker tones. Yeah. There was a little bit of like not so much grief on Perrin's half, like he fully like killed his wife.
I know,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
like he would, I would think he would be more distraught than he was. But they did a good job later with the warder where his wizard died, and then he
Right, yeah, and
he
he
ended
just
up
like,
killing
yeah.
himself with how much grief he was in. But
Yeah.
they supposedly
I
have
thought they
this
did a
like
good
deeper
job with that.
connection than
Yeah.
they have like a magical connection.
Yeah, and so it's not that I hate gritty tones in filmmaking. I mean, I think that obviously those have a place in filmmaking and those are part of the human experience, and I want to have that like full range in a film or in a movie or whatever. I just don't like the like, this is like what I'm saying is like they basically desaturate it and now suddenly it's like, I don't like it when it's forced, when it's not enhancing the story.
A good example is the funeral for that character, the warder that kills himself. Is that scene is very well lit and very bright, and a lot of them are wearing white.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was a pretty like sad and like morose scene where they're all like crying and they don't force Lan to sort of take on their grief, and he like cries, and that actor did a good job.
He looked distraught.
There was a really funny thing I noticed where like they're doing that sort of like chest thing. Actors aren't always musicians, so they're not very good at rhythm a lot of the time, and I'm a very like rhythmic person, and so some of them were like chest bumping like off beat and not in tempo, and I was like, I like could spot them as they were like starting to like go along with it, and I could tell they like dubbed in the padding later.
There's no way that they could do that in real time.
It was just really funny thing that I noticed where I was like one of them started doing the like chest pump, and they were like doing it too fast or a little too slow or like not quite in like tempo. So what have you read a lot of fantasy books?
Yeah, I don't know that I've there are definitely a few big ones that are on my list. I would say that I'm a fan. I wouldn't say that I've had a lot of time to read in the past few years.
Yeah. Really? You've had like 3 years off.
Oh,
time to read it all?
Yeah. No, my stress response is to revisit old things. So I will reread or rewatch the same thing 100 times when I feel stressed out.
Yeah.
I read new things when I'm in a happy, fun mood, and it's just, I'm sorry, it's been a hard couple of years.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm just poking fun.
Yeah.
I haven't read anything new in a long time either. I am a big fan of these types of books, though.
Me too.
I tend to like them more, though, when they are short. So I don't think that I'm going to read The Wheel of Time.
Okay. I do really like long epics. I do. Like a lot of Brandon Sanderson's on my list. Like The Way of Kings has been on my list for a long time.
I think if a book is a standalone book, but it's a chunky book, I would be fine with it. Or it's a trilogy, I would be fine with it. As soon as you get to 5 to 10 books, you lose me. Like before I've even started reading, you've already lost me. I mentioned earlier that that's the reason I started reading the Hellboy graphic novels, is because I was talking to someone, and they were like, yeah, it was really awesome the way Hellboy ended. And I was like, Hellboy ended? Graphic novels never end. Unless they're like a standalone. I was so surprised that they ended it. And so I read it, and it was great. It's
hard because like there are definitely series that I have on pause as well. And some of them not voluntarily, like The Name of the Wind. It's just like, it's just permanently on pause,
please, Patrick,
really.
Please.
Yeah, but no, don't grovel. It's beneath you. But I've also had like The Tarn of Emberlin on pre-order for 3 years now. I paid for the pre-order. It was supposed to be coming out in like 4 months, and 4 years later, it's still not here. So
yeah, I've read a lot of these types of books though. Like you've seen my like bookshelf, and you've seen my like box of books that I haven't had. Like I don't have the space on the shelf for.
The problem is that I feel excluded by a lot of fantasy. Let's say pre-year 2000, like I feel very excluded, and I feel like those books aren't necessarily for me. And I don't enjoy reading them as much as I would if like they were more diverse or like more And so I like a lot of modern fantasy a lot, but then I run into this issue of like, oh, the series aren't complete. Now it's on pre-order for 4 years, and it's like...
Or the series isn't complete as of
like,
10 years ago, and the author's dead.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, it's kind of a tough balance because, like, I like a lot of modern fantasy. A lot of it is not complete, and I'm slowly starting to, like, realize that if I start a book series and I can't read the next installment within, like, the next year or so, I'm gonna, like, lose investment in the whole franchise, and that's rough too. And I mean, like, I obviously don't hurry authors along because, like, that's such an awful thing to do.
And it's a
like,
rough process, so I totally understand taking
and
years
writing
off.
a book is not easy, right? Like, and if you can't do it, like, if you can't finish the series, like, no shame, like, you tried.
Yeah. I think, though, that there is this level of, like, people put them on pedestals, these book series that are 14, 15 books long, and each book in itself is, like, 3 books.
Yeah.
And I just think that's sort of fostering a
like
negative environment.
50, 60, 80 years old. And,
Yeah.
like, I love Lord of the Rings, but there are no women in Lord of the Rings. There's
and
all the people who
characters,
look like
3
me.
named women.
Yeah, and all the people who look at me in Lord of the Rings are evil.
4, sorry.
Yeah.
The trivia was that there were 4.
Yeah. But, like, all the people in Lord of the Rings who look like me are evil. So, you know, I don't find that particularly nice.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, it's a common trope in these sorts of books.
It is a common trope.
The other is the evil.
Right, exactly. And I just fall into being the other so much of the time that I... You know, and they're not bad books. I mean, they're good books, but that's what I mean when I say, like, I just feel excluded by a lot of classic fantasy. And
I would recommend the Dragonlance trilogy to anyone who likes these kinds of books. They're short-ish. They're not quite the thickness of, like, Wheel of Time. They're maybe the size of, like, The Lord of the Rings, I would say. Like, they're about that same size. Although, I think my copy of Lord of the Rings is a bit smaller than it's supposed to be. Like, I don't know how the original... books, like how thick they look, but they're maybe like, you know, 2, 3 inches thick. And though there is the Dragonlance series is way more than just this trilogy, like that's sort of the thing that I think they did well is they have like a million spin-offs and they've continued the story past what happened and they've like had these like, you know, alternate series that they've gone off on following different characters, following the same characters doing different things. But they had an original trilogy that they came out with, and that is a self-contained story that ends. And it's good. I think it's pretty good. It's a little bit old and tropey, but I think it's pretty good. And it's half written by a woman. It's like there are 2 authors. I can't remember their names, Tracy something and Margaret Weiss. And it's a guy and a girl. So I don't know that it's too diverse in terms of culturally, but it is diverse in terms of like genders, at least. At least. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, begging and choosing.
It's not like I hate old fantasy or anything. Quite the contrary. I love it.
Yeah.
I just like don't see myself in it, and so I don't get as invested, I feel. Like it takes effort for me to get invested rather than just happening effortlessly. Yeah.
I have a few book series that like I've wanted just to pick up. A lot of the like old Dungeons and Dragons books that are kind of like very easy reads, I think are good to go through.
Yeah, that would be fun, I think.
Like maybe. Easy read, sort of like very generic, like the hero fighting against the Dark Lord, and then his, you know, he just beats him in the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm finding it hard to be invested in anything lately.
Yeah, I just find these books that are so high concept are just really like, this isn't the time to be sort of having those. So I think The Wheel of Time, though the show is good, I think you're not going to invest readers in this sort of story.
Maybe in a couple of years.
Maybe in a couple of years.
When I feel like I have more time.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now I don't think I can. And I didn't realize like how easy it is to get invested in a book when you relate to the main character. Like this is a really new concept for me that I've only like recently discovered happens to people, and I'm just like, oh, it's so like okay.
What do you mean you don't just generically invest in Joe McSword with
Like,
short brown hair
it takes
and
me time,
light skin.
right? And
No,
and
I
I
get
find that there's a lot of classic fantasy that I just find objectionable.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of people love The Wizard's First Rule, but like
I never read that one. I don't think I've even heard about that one.
there's this like it's creepy. It's just like there's this creepy scene in it where like the female character like just ties up the main character and has her way with him basically.
Ew, weird.
And it's just like weird and rapey and
Yeah.
it's gross and I don't like
Hearing
it.
that, I honestly think Patrick Rothfuss heard that and was like, that's fucking gross and weird. And in The Name of the Wind, I have it highlighted, or I had it highlighted in my original book. There's this line, I can't remember exactly how the line goes, but the scene is they like are hiding in this like old smuggler hovel and they find what they think is food, and she like the female character that the main character has been pining after the whole time. It's been so long I can't really remember their names. She eats some of it and she's like, oh, it's weird, it tastes like charcoal-y. And then the main character realizes like that's basically heroin. And he like makes her spit it out. Or no, he shoves charcoal in her mouth. That's what it is. It's like I can't remember exactly. It's like amber or like maple syrup kind of. And then she's all high and like weird and like coming on to him, and he's like anyone who like would take advantage of a scenario like this is like weird and fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Is basically what the line is. And knowing that like a lot of these fantasy books that tends to happen where the characters get drunk and then in the throes of passion they like have their way with each other, and it's like I feel like Patrick Rothfuss was calling those people out.
Yeah, see, and this is why I like modern fantasy more than classic fantasy, because like it matches my attitudes better.
Yeah.
Not to say like old fantasy is bad or anything. Like the classics are classics for a reason, but like I don't condone anything, like everything that happens in like Lolita or Anna Karenina, like so it's hard. It's hard.
It's hard to find a good like place to get into it, because it's such a huge pool of books, and there is like 98% of them that are like basically that they are that like very problematic in a lot of ways, and just they got away with it because they're the only ones writing that style of book, and so they got popular by the fact that there was nothing else on the market.
Yeah. What's also really hard is that people in these fandoms like are zealous in their defense of these books. Like attitudes have changed over the past 50 years. Like that's fine. That happens. Like it's okay. You can still enjoy a book without agreeing with everything that happens in it. Yeah.
And without condoning the author.
Yeah.
I think we should think of a like question.
Well, I have a question, but also like one more thing that I found really funny in The Wheel of Time was how they kept bringing up their accents.
Oh yeah, it was
so funny.
They all have this very like English sort of whatever you call that accent, the like traditional
like the
English.
received pronunciation, like the PCR.
And the only people that spoke differently were who was it?
Well, okay, so the leader of the Blue Mages.
Yeah, the leader of the Blue Mages had a bit of a Scottish.
And then the like.
Oh, the Tinkers had Irish accents.
They had Irish accents. And I'm sorry, that was not a good look. Like the people who you're portraying to be like nomadic,
like wayfarer style people.
Like, and they're like they have the Irish accents. And it's just like, oh my god. Yeah.
And,
you were doing so well. You were doing so well.
It might be in the book they describe them like very specifically as having a sort of Irish accent.
See, I think in the book they must describe them as having different accents, like because they keep saying like, "Oh, the Two Rivers," like
I can
country
tell you're
bumpkin
from there.
accent.
You sound so different. Like, they sound exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. It was just so funny.
And the only other people were the like Final Fortress people. Some of them had a bit of a like Asian-ish accent.
Yeah.
But no one talks differently. They keep saying it. They keep saying that line. I can tell from your accent. Something about your accent. And it's like they all sound exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I thought it was really funny.
I wanted to bring it up. Too. And I totally agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, you're right that this must have been like a British production, because everyone had the same accent. And then they dropped these lines so often. They dropped a lot of lines. They dropped a lot of really generic, like, fantasy storylines. The like.
Yeah, of course.
I can't remember exactly what they are right now off the cuff, but I definitely think you could do a like fantasy trope bingo with a movie or a show like this.
You really could.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a really fun stream.
Yeah. If we ever like have enough viewers and do a stream, we'll do we'll watch some like fantasy thing and have like fantasy bingo.
Yeah, we'll do fantasy bingo.
Yeah. Do you have a question though?
I do. Okay. So, which one of the 5 did you think was the one?
Which one of the 5 did I think was the one?
Yeah.
I was bouncing
around. In like episode 1 or 2.
In episode 1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I wanted so badly for it not to be Rand. Rand.
Yeah.
I wanted so badly for it not to be Rand, so I was looking for it in other people, and I wanted it so badly to be Perrin, but I knew that it wasn't Perrin. I think I could tell it wasn't Perrin. Yeah. Perrin had something else going on with the wolves that I was like, okay, they're setting him up to be maybe a little bit powerful, but I don't think it was Rand. I thought it was the river girl. I can't remember her name right now.
Nynaeve?
No, the other one.
Igraine.
Igraine. I thought it was Igraine until Nynaeve did the power.
Uh-huh.
That was pretty late in the show, so it's a bit of a cop-out for me to say that.
It was like episode 3 or 4. It wasn't very late.
Episode 5 or 6.
Do you? Maybe it was episode 5.
I don't quite remember, but I thought it was Igraine until Perrin did the healing explosion. Then I thought it was her.
Nynaeve. Yeah.
Perrin. I wanted to be Perrin so bad. I'm like bringing it up as him.
It's just a Freudian slip.
And then another thing I was pretty confident was that it could be all of them.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There is that. I
thought they were gonna like Power Rangers assemble.
Yeah.
I thought they were just gonna like form one Mega Droid, and then that would...
I think it could have been really interesting if they did something like that, because there is that classic trope of Tiamat being the like ultimate dragon form. Mm-hmm. Tiamat is the like 5-headed dragon from Dungeons and Dragons, where each head has a different element. And they all did kind of have their own like elements going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And I thought they could have done
that's why I
with
thought
that.
it would be like the Power Rangers assemble. They like would do that. Basically like what they did, what the 5 women did in like the final stand, where they like joined together, linked together, and like channeled. Yeah. Like I thought that was gonna be the thing that happened at the end, like the Eternals Unimind type thing. I'm just like
it could have been cool. I think they could have done something there. I'm a little sad they didn't end up actually becoming a dragon.
Right, yeah.
I love dragons. Dragons are rad. And then with Rand just sort of being like
dragon.
Like being like, I am the dragon reborn, then he just does some like channels the one power into the idol and drops it. It's cool that dragon is more of a metaphor, but I do love myself a good fucking scaly lizard monster.
Yeah. Yeah. They just like go Power Rangers into a dragon, and then they just like eat the evil dark one.
That's
just like chomp.
All problems can be solved by eating.
Yeah.
Little known fact. All right, so who did you think was the Dragon Reborn before in episode 2, and of actually not just of the 5, of anyone?
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for listening.
That's all. Bye.
That's all. What do we like?
That's
Looney
all,
Tunes?
folks.
That's all, folks.